My life before Liam Vance was a different canvas entirely. I grew up in a vibrant, slightly chaotic household, filled with art supplies, stacks of books, and the constant hum of creativity. My parents, both public school teachers, instilled in me a deep love for learning and a quiet pride in making my own way. I cherished my modest, sunlit apartment in the city, my thriving career teaching art to elementary schoolers, and the small gallery I co-owned on the weekends. My sanctuary was my classroom, a place where messy hands and bright ideas flourished, where every child had the potential to create something beautiful. I felt in control there, respected for my passion and dedication. That feeling, however, evaporated the moment I stepped across the threshold of the Sterling estate. Liam and I had been married for 3 blissful years, a whirlwind romance that somehow, against all odds, seemed to thrive despite the vast chasm between our worlds. Liam was everything I could ever want: kind-hearted, intelligent, quick-witted, and possessing a gentle strength that grounded me. He loved me without reservation, and in return, I adored him. His one fatal flaw, however, was his deep-seated conflict avoidance, especially when it came to his family. The Sterlings were old money, a tech empire built by generations of ruthless ambition and shrewd investments. They moved through life with an air of inherited entitlement, their wealth a shield against consequence, their connections an invisible web of power. Arthur Sterling, my father-in-law, was the patriarch, a titan of industry whose name was synonymous with innovation and intimidation. He'd built his fortune in the booming tech sector, acquiring startups, crushing competitors, and ruling his family with the same iron fist he used in boardrooms. Tall, imposing, with eyes that seemed to dissect your very thoughts, he perpetually wore bespoke suits that made him seem carved from granite. He had a way of making you feel infinitesimally small, with a mere glance, a dismissive wave of his hand. His booming voice could silence a room, and his approval was a scarce, precious commodity that even his own children desperately sought. Vivian Sterling, my mother-in-law, complemented her husband perfectly, like a flawless, chilling sculpture. Cold and calculating, she obsessed over appearances and social standing above all else. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair never moved, much like the frozen expressions on her meticulously made-up face. She had mastered the art of delivering cutting remarks disguised as compliments, her voice a syrupy whisper that left a sting. "Alara, dear, that outfit is so brave of you," she'd purr, her eyes sweeping over my modest dress at a formal dinner. "I could never pull off something so casual among our guests. But then you're so artistic." The implication was clear. I was an outsider, quaint and unsophisticated. Then there was Chloe, Liam's older sister and Clara's mother. At 35, she had never held a real job, floating through life on the ample cushions of her trust fund and the vast network of Sterling connections. She'd had Clara in her late 20s with a man she barely knew, a fleeting encounter that ended conveniently before the birth, leaving Chloe free of any long-term inconvenience. Chloe was beautiful in a brittle, high-maintenance way, entitled to her core and completely irresponsible. She treated her daughter less like a human being and more like an inconvenient accessory, a prop to be wheeled out when needed, then tucked away. Julian, Liam's older brother, was a successful investment banker, a mirror image of Arthur in his ruthless pursuit of power and wealth. He rarely spoke to me directly, as if acknowledging my existence might somehow diminish his standing in the family hierarchy, or perhaps contaminate his carefully constructed world. He was Arthur's favored son, the one who would carry on the Sterling legacy, and he walked with the confidence of someone who knew his place at the top of the food chain. And finally, my husband, Liam, the youngest child, forever caught in the middle, desperately seeking approval from his formidable family while trying to maintain peace with me. More often than not, I felt like I was losing the tug-of-war for his loyalty, the invisible pull of his family's expectations always outweighing my quiet appeals. From the moment I entered the Sterling family, I was treated as an outsider. My middle-class background and my career in public education were viewed with barely concealed disdain. My artistic pursuits were seen as a charming hobby, nothing more. Nothing I did was ever good enough. My cooking was quaint, my home decorating simple, and my career choice noble but impractical. Every family gathering was an exercise in extreme restraint, as I bit my tongue and swallowed my pride to keep the peace for Liam's sake. I saw the toll it took on him, the way he would flinch at Arthur's booming commands, the subtle tension in his shoulders when Vivian delivered a passive-aggressive barb. But he never challenged them, not really. And then there was Clara, Chloe's daughter. According to the family, Clara had been born with a severe neurological disorder that left her unable to speak or move independently. She required round-the-clock care, which Chloe largely delegated to a rotating staff of nurses and caretakers. I had seen Clara during family gatherings, always in her specialized wheelchair, staring blankly ahead, never responding to anything around her. Her eyes, though, always struck me. Something about them seemed alert, intelligent even. But I dismissed these thoughts as wishful thinking. After all, I wasn't a medical professional, and the family had consulted the best specialists in the country, as Vivian often reminded me with a sigh, implying the immense burden they carried. The whole situation with Clara being left in my care started with a phone call 3 days before their departure. Vivian called not to ask, but to inform me that I would be staying at their sprawling estate to care for Clara, while the entire family, Chloe included, enjoyed a 2-week vacation in the Caribbean. "Alara, darling, we need you to watch Clara while we're away," Vivian announced, her tone making it abundantly clear this wasn't a request, but a decree. "It's just impossible to find reliable help these days, and we simply must get away." "What about her regular nurses?" I asked, already knowing I was being manipulated, a familiar knot tightening in my stomach. "Oh, we had to let them go." Vivian waved her hand dismissively. "Such unreliable people, always demanding things, never truly dedicated. Besides, family should take care of family." Liam already agreed. Of course he had, without consulting me first, as usual. When I confronted Liam, he gave me his best apologetic look, his brow furrowed with genuine distress. "Babe, they really need our help. It's just for 2 weeks, and we can stay in the guest suite. It's practically like having our own apartment." He pulled me into a hug, hoping to diffuse my rising frustration. "What about my gallery? What about my students?" I countered, pulling away slightly. "I can't just abandon my classes mid-semester. It's almost exhibition season for my adult students, and my kids are preparing for their spring art show." "It's spring break next week, remember?" Liam said, trying to sound reassuring. "And Mom said she'll have Dad call the superintendent for the 2nd week. You know he's a major donor to the school district. He's already smoothed things over with the gallery co-owner." And there it was, the Sterling way. Rules didn't apply to them, obligations could be rearranged with a phone call and a hefty checkbook. It was infuriating, the casual disregard for anyone else's life or commitments. I reluctantly agreed, not because I wanted to, but because refusing would have caused a family rift that Liam wasn't prepared to handle, and I knew he would suffer for it. My heart ached for him, caught between his overbearing family and his desire for peace. The day before their departure, Liam and I moved into the sprawling Sterling mansion, a cavernous monument to wealth and pretension. I received a crash course in Clara's care from Chloe, who seemed more interested in her freshly manicured nails than her daughter. "She needs her medication 3 times a day. It's all labeled. Don't miss a dose or she gets difficult," Chloe explained, barely looking at Clara, who sat silently in her wheelchair, a blank doll in a designer dress. "Difficult how?" I asked, a flicker of unease stirring within me. "Just trust me. Keep her on schedule." Chloe handed me a thick binder. "Everything's in here. Feeding instructions, medication times, emergency contacts. Not that she'll need a doctor. It's all just for show." That last comment struck me as particularly odd. For show? But before I could question it, Arthur interrupted, his voice booming through the grand foyer. "Alara, understand this is a massive responsibility. We're trusting you with our precious granddaughter. Don't disappoint us. My connections run deep, and I will know if anything is amiss." His words were a veiled threat, a reminder of their omnipresent power. The family's departure the next morning was a whirlwind of activity. Designer luggage was loaded into waiting town cars. Last-minute instructions were barked. Chloe, glamorous in a wide-brimmed hat, took a selfie with Liam before stepping into the car. Not once did anyone, not even Chloe, stop to say a proper goodbye to Clara, who sat in her wheelchair by the window, supposedly unaware of the chaos around her. It was as if she were part of the furniture, an item on a checklist. As the cars pulled away, Liam hugged me, his gaze clouded with unspoken apology. I'm sorry, babe. Dad insisted I come along for some business meetings in Port Royal. You'll be okay, right? I nodded, feeling abandoned and resentful as I watched my husband leave with his family, disappearing into the Caribbean sun, leaving me alone with a child I barely knew how to care for, standing in the cavernous foyer of the Sterling mansion. I looked at Clara's blank expression, her eyes staring into the distance, and sighed. Well, I guess it's just you and me now, Clara. Little did I know how quickly that statement would take on a whole new, terrifying meaning. After everyone left, the vast Sterling estate fell into an unsettling silence, broken only by the distant hum of the air conditioning. I wheeled Clara into the enormous living room and positioned her in front of the television, playing a children's program as the care instructions suggested. The binder specified engaging visual stimuli, a sterile phrase that did nothing to soothe my unease. I spoke to her gently, explaining what I was doing, narrating my movements, though I didn't expect any response. I'm going to make us some dinner, Clara. I'll be right in the kitchen if you need anything. I felt silly talking to her as if she could understand, but it felt wrong, dehumanizing, to treat her like a piece of furniture, an inert object. My artistic sensibilities rebelled against such callousness. The detailed care binder indicated it was almost time for her evening medication. So I headed to the kitchen to prepare her prescribed liquid diet and the array of pills she supposedly needed. The Sterling kitchen was a chef's dream, all stainless steel, vast marble countertops, and high-end appliances that probably rarely saw actual use. The family employed a full-time cook who, conveniently, was also on vacation. I busied myself preparing a simple pasta dish for myself, something comforting, and the special nutritional shake for Clara. The hum of the industrial-grade refrigerator filled the silence, and I tried to focus on the rhythmic stirring of the pasta sauce. As I stirred, a prickling sensation ran up my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My hairs stood on end, a primal instinct kicking in. I turned around, expecting to see one of the household staff I hadn't been introduced to, perhaps a cleaner or a security guard I hadn't noticed. What I saw instead nearly made me drop the wooden spoon I was holding, sending pasta sauce splattering across the pristine marble. Clara was standing in the doorway, not in her wheelchair, standing on her own 2 feet. Her posture was slightly unsteady, a tremor in her knees, but she was upright, her small hand braced against the door frame for support. Her eyes, those intelligent eyes I had noticed before, were no longer blank. They were wide, fixed on me, filled with an urgent, pleading intelligence I hadn't imagined possible. Clara, I whispered, the name catching in my throat. My mind reeled, struggling to reconcile the image before me with everything I had been told. My voice was a mere breath, unable to believe what I was seeing. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, with the slight lisp of a normal 8-year-old, but perfectly clear, cutting through the stunned silence like a sharp knife. They want my $5 million, or please help me. The room seemed to spin around me. The sterile, gleaming kitchen suddenly felt alien, menacing. I gripped the cold marble countertop, knuckles white, trying to steady myself, certain I was hallucinating, that the stress of the day had finally broken my mind. The supposedly mute, paralyzed child had just walked into the kitchen and spoken a perfectly coherent, terrifying sentence. Clara, I repeated. My voice barely audible, a fragile whisper of disbelief. You can talk and walk? She nodded, her eyes, those remarkable intelligent eyes, now filled with a mixture of profound fear and desperate hope. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking slightly, please don't tell them I talked to you. They'll hurt me again. Really bad. I abandoned the stove, the pasta sauce now bubbling precariously, forgotten. I slowly approached her, my movements deliberate, as if approaching a skittish, wild animal. I knelt to her level, keeping some distance to avoid frightening her, to give her space. Clara, I don't understand, I said, my voice gentle, trying to project calm I didn't feel. Who will hurt you? What $5 million? Her little face contorted with worry, a raw, vulnerable expression that tore at my heart. My mom, she choked out, her voice barely above a whisper. And Grandpa Arthur and Grandma Vivian, they pretend I'm sick so they can take my money when I'm 18. They said I'd be sent away if I ever told anyone. My mind raced, trying to make sense of this monstrous revelation. How could this be possible? An entire family, a powerful, respected family, pretending a child was disabled, exploiting her for money. It seemed too monstrous to be real, like something out of a pulp novel, not the polished, sophisticated world of the Sterlings. The cold, logical part of my brain screamed for explanation, but my gut, my instincts, were already recoiling in horror. "Come, sit down," I said gently. My hand lightly on her back, guiding her to a kitchen chair. "Can you tell me more? Everything you know." My voice was still shaky, but a new resolve was beginning to take root, replacing the initial shock. Over the next hour, as the pasta sauce burned and was forgotten, filling the air with a faint, acrid smell, Clara told me her story. Her maternal grandparents, the Tremaines, Chloe's former in-laws, whom the Sterlings openly despised, and often referred to as those crude oil barons, had left Clara a trust fund of $5 million upon their death in a car accident when she was 3. The money was to be held in trust until she turned 18, with her mother Chloe as the sole trustee. "Mommy started giving me medicine after Granny and Pops died," Clara explained, her small hands twisting nervously in her lap. "It makes me feel sleepy and weak, like my brain is full of fuzz. When I tried not to take it, she would pinch me really hard, or twist my arm, or lock me in the dark closet for a long, long time. Sometimes, Grandpa Arthur would come in and just stare at me, and his eyes would look really, really mad." Tears streamed silently down her face as she continued, her voice gaining a quiet strength despite her fear. "They told everyone I was born sick, but I wasn't. I remember running and playing and talking before the medicine started. I remember my other grandparents reading me stories and letting me paint. I was normal. I felt physically ill as Clara described her daily reality, how she was forced to pretend she couldn't speak or move whenever anyone was around. How she was threatened and punished if she showed any signs of normalcy, any flicker of awareness. How the family, particularly Arthur and Chloe, would discuss their plans to have her declared mentally incompetent when she turned 18, so they could control her inheritance indefinitely. The casual cruelty, the calculated malevolence, sent shivers down my spine. This wasn't just neglect. It was systematic torture, a life sentence in her own body. "How do you know about the money, Clara?" I asked, struggling to process everything, to keep my voice steady. Clara's face showed a flash of pride, a remarkable glimmer of resilience. "I taught myself to read when no one was watching," she said, her chest puffing out slightly. "Mommy leaves papers around, and I look at them when she's out, or when the nurses aren't looking, and I have a diary where I write everything down so I don't forget." She led me, still somewhat unsteadily, to her room, a sterile, hospital-like space that broke my heart with its cold efficiency. There were no toys, no childish drawings on the walls, just medical equipment and a bland, oversized bed. From beneath her mattress, she pulled out a small, worn notebook and several folded documents she had apparently stolen from Chloe's office over time, hidden away like precious contraband. The diary was filled with the neat, determined handwriting of a child who had taught herself literacy in secret, letter by painful letter. The entries documented the family's conversations about her money, the medications they forced on her, and the terrifying threats they used to keep her silent. The documents included a copy of the trust agreement from her maternal grandparents, bank statements showing the significant balance, and troublingly, what appeared to be draft documents for a psychiatric evaluation that would declare Clara incompetent, a chilling blueprint for her perpetual imprisonment. I sat on the edge of her bed, the stolen documents spread around us, feeling a mixture of horror, disbelief, and a cold, righteous rage building inside me. This wasn't just a family secret. It was a crime of immense cruelty. "Why are you telling me this now, Clara?" I asked, my voice tight with emotion. "Why take this risk? They told me you don't even understand what's happening." Clara's eyes filled with tears again, large glistening drops spilling down her cheeks. "Because you're nice," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You talk to me like I'm real, and—" She hesitated, looking away, then back at me, her gaze unwavering. "They've never left me with just one person before. Always nurses who believe them, who just give me the medicine. I was hoping, maybe you could help me. You look like you care." In that moment, looking at this brave, fragile little girl who had endured years of unimaginable abuse and isolation for the sake of money, I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. my professional life, my marriage, my entire future. It all faded into insignificance compared to the injustice before me. "I will help you, Clara," I promised. My voice firm, my hand reaching out to gently smooth her hair. "I promise, you're not alone anymore." The words felt heavy with the weight of that promise, but also with a fierce, unwavering resolve. The next morning, I faced a crucial decision. My stomach churned with anxiety as I approached Clara's designated medication time. Should I give Clara her medication as instructed, perpetuating her silent torment, or trust her incredible story and withhold it? The potential consequences weighed heavily on me. If she truly needed the medication and I withheld it, I could be putting her health at severe risk. I was not a medical professional. I was an art teacher. But if her story was true, and every fiber of my being, every gut instinct, screamed that it was, then I would be actively participating in her abuse. I decided to trust my instincts. My resolve had hardened overnight. I made a show of preparing her morning medication, carefully measuring the liquid, crushing the pills. My hands trembled slightly as I carried the tray towards Clara's room. But then, with a deep breath, I veered off course, walking directly to the large stainless steel sink in the utility room. I watched, a silent defiance swelling within me, as the murky liquid and crushed pills swirled down the drain, disappearing into the Sterling's elaborate plumbing system. I then gave her the nutritional shake without the sedatives, watching anxiously for any adverse effects, any signs of withdrawal or discomfort. By midday, the transformation was remarkable, almost miraculous. It was subtle at first, a slight tremor in her hands diminishing, a little more alertness in her gaze. Then it accelerated. Clara became more alert, her movements more coordinated, no longer stiff or jerky. Her speech, which had been somewhat slurred and hesitant the previous evening, became clearer, more animated, filled with a child's natural curiosity. She seemed like a completely normal 8-year-old girl, albeit one who had been cruelly isolated from normal childhood experiences, deprived of the simple joys most children take for granted. "I feel better when I don't take the medicine," she confided, her eyes brighter than I'd ever seen them, sparkling with a newfound energy. "My head doesn't feel fuzzy anymore. It's like a cloud lifted." She tried to stand up from her chair, wobbled slightly, then took a confident step. Her progress was astonishing, a testament to the fact that her illness was entirely manufactured. Together, we began a methodical search of the house for evidence to support her claims. Clara knew the mansion surprisingly well, having spent countless hours observing from her wheelchair, supposedly oblivious, while the family and staff moved around her. Her intelligence was clearly far beyond what anyone gave her credit for. "Mommy keeps important papers in her office," Clara directed me, her small finger pointing down a long, opulent corridor. "The key is under the plant pot, the one with the really spiky leaves, next to her big desk." Chloe's office was a testament to her superficial personality. All style and no substance. Designer furniture, glossy fashion magazines scattered carelessly on a glass coffee table, and barely touched business books lining pristine shelves. A large, ornate desk dominated the room. The filing cabinet Clara indicated was indeed locked, but the key was exactly where she said it would be, nestled beneath the thorny leaves of an exotic succulent. Inside, I found a treasure trove of damning evidence. Financial documents detailed the trust from Clara's maternal grandparents, the Tremaines, who had indeed left her $5 million. There were detailed statements, investment reports, and projections for the fund's growth. I also found legal correspondence about the terms of the trust, which explicitly named Chloe as trustee until Clara turned 18 or was deemed mentally capable of managing her affairs. The conditions were clear. Most disturbing was a folder labeled Clara's condition. Inside were medical records that had clearly been falsified or obtained through deception. There were prescription records for powerful sedatives and muscle relaxants, medications that would indeed make an active child appear listless, immobile, and confused. The dates coincided perfectly with the period after the Tremaine's death. "Look," Clara pointed to a document I had overlooked, her finger tracing a line on the paper. It was her original birth record and early pediatric reports. They showed a perfectly healthy baby with normal developmental milestones up to age 3. Then suddenly, the reports changed dramatically, documenting a rapid regression, a sudden onset of symptoms that coincided exactly with the death of her maternal grandparents. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, forming a horrifying picture. My blood ran cold when Clara led me to her official bedroom, the one designed to appear as a sick room. She pointed to nearly invisible small devices nestled in the upper corners of the room, almost perfectly camouflaged by the ornate crown molding. "They watch me sometimes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "To make sure I'm being good, to make sure I take the medicine." I recognized them immediately as surveillance cameras, tiny lenses observing her every move. The family monitored this child like a prisoner, ensuring their narrative of her disability remained unbroken. As we continued our investigation, moving through the quiet house, Clara shared the horrifying details of her daily reality. How Chloe would pinch her or twist her arm when no one was looking, a quick, sharp pain if Clara showed any signs of awareness or responsiveness, even a flicker in her eyes. How Arthur would sometimes enter her room late at night, his imposing shadow falling over her bed, to check on her and remind her in graphic, chilling terms what would happen if she ever revealed their secret. He said he'd send me to a place where I'd never see anyone again. A very dark place, she recounted, her voice trembling, and how Vivian would parade her at charity events as the family's special burden, generating sympathy and donations which, I now suspected, went nowhere near actual charitable causes, but perhaps back into the sterling coffers. "Grandma Vivian says I'm useful for making people feel sorry for them," Clara said with a wisdom far beyond her years, her small face devoid of childish innocence. "She says it's the only way I can contribute to the family." The callousness of their words, recounted by an 8-year-old, was truly sickening. My phone rang, interrupting our grim investigation. It was Vivian, checking in as promised. I put on my most pleasant, reassuring voice, assuring her everything was fine, trying to mimic the calm I no longer felt. Clara sat silently beside me, her eyes wide with fear, listening intently. "Remember, Alara," Vivian reminded me, her voice syrupy sweet, but with an undertone of steel. Consistency is key with Clara's care. Any deviation from her routine could be problematic. She's so delicate. "Of course," I replied smoothly, my free hand clenching into a fist, a silent act of defiance. Everything's going exactly according to schedule. After the call ended, we continued our search, moving to Chloe's personal computer. Clara knew the password. "It's always her birthday," she explained matter-of-factly, a detail that spoke volumes about Chloe's self-obsession. We found emails between family members discussing the trust fund in cold business-like terms, complaints about the burden of maintaining Clara's supposed condition, and most damning of all, detailed plans for having her declared legally incompetent when she turned 18. They weren't just exploiting her, they were planning her permanent legal incapacitation. One email from Arthur to Chloe made my stomach turn. "The amendments to the trust are proceeding," it read. "Judge Hawthorne owes me a favor, and his firm handles these matters discreetly. Once the paperwork is finalized, even if the girl somehow manages to convince someone of her competence, the money remains under family control. Maintain the current protocols until then. No slip-ups." This was a systemic, calculated conspiracy. We also found legal documents showing recent unapproved amendments to the trust that would give Chloe continued control over the funds, even if Clara were somehow determined to be competent. They were covering all their bases, legally shackling a child to their greed. In Chloe's bedroom, behind an expensive, abstract painting, we discovered a wall safe. Clara didn't know the combination, but I had a hunch. I tried Chloe's birthday. Nothing. Then I tried Clara's birth date, a quiet gamble, and with a soft click, the safe swung open. Inside were more financial documents, dazzling jewelry, and a small USB drive. When we plugged the drive into Chloe's computer, we found a trove of critical information, medical records showing that Clara had been completely healthy at birth, with no signs of any disorder. There were also videos of Clara as a toddler, running, laughing, talking, a bright, active child. This was concrete, irrefutable evidence that she had developed normally before her grandparents' death, before the Sterlings began their cruel charade. By evening, I had compiled overwhelming evidence of the Montgomery family's elaborate scheme. Falsified medical records, financial documents, incriminating emails, Clara's own testimony, and now, photographic and video proof. But I was still missing one crucial piece of information. Why go to such extreme lengths for $5 million? While certainly a significant sum, the Sterlings were already immensely wealthy. Arthur's tech empire was worth billions. There had to be more to the story. The puzzle wasn't complete. The answer came when Clara, with a sly look, showed me a hidden compartment in her specialized wheelchair. It was a small, cleverly designed space where she had stashed various papers she'd collected over the years, scraps of information she deemed important. Among them was a letter, yellowed with age, addressed, "To my dearest Clara, on your 18th birthday." It had been written by her maternal grandfather, Mr. Tremaine, and had mistakenly been included in some papers Chloe had received after their death. The letter revealed the stunning truth. The $5 million was just the beginning. The Tremaines had been incredibly successful oil investors who had sold their company for a staggering fortune just months before their demise. The bulk of their estate, nearly $500 million, was held in a separate, far larger trust that would transfer to Clara when she turned 25, but only if she was deemed mentally competent and had full independent control of the initial $5 million trust. The Sterlings hadn't just been after $5 million. They were playing a long, calculated game for a fortune more than 10 times that amount, a sum that could secure their legacy for generations. It wasn't just greed. It was insatiable, monstrous ambition. As I tucked Clara into bed that night, in a guest room far from the surveillance cameras, a room with soft lamplight and a proper, comfortable bed, I felt a fierce determination taking root inside me. This brave little girl had endured years of unimaginable abuse and isolation, her entire childhood stolen, and I was now her only hope for freedom. She had trusted me, a relative stranger, with her darkest secret, and I would not fail her. "We're going to fix this, Clara," I promised, smoothing her hair, her small hand clutching mine tightly. "You're not alone anymore, not ever again." The next morning, Clara and I sat at a small breakfast nook in the kitchen, away from any potential surveillance cameras. The air felt charged with unspoken purpose. We ate a simple breakfast, toast and scrambled eggs, a small act of normalcy, and began planning our next steps. I needed to understand exactly what she wanted, not just what I thought was best for her. "If you could have anything, Clara," I asked gently, trying to keep my voice light, "what would it be? Anything at all?" Her answer was immediate and heartbreaking in its simplicity, a stark contrast to the opulence surrounding us. "I want to go to real school," she said, her small fingers tracing patterns on the condensation on her glass of orange juice. "I want friends. I want to run around and play without getting fuzzy or sleepy. I want to not be afraid all the time." She paused, her eyes, now clear and bright, meeting mine. "And I want my mom to love me for real, not just pretend in front of people." The sincerity in her voice, the deep, aching longing for a genuine connection with the woman who had betrayed her so cruelly, nearly broke me. Despite everything her family had done to her, the years of pain and neglect, she still longed for their genuine affection. It was a painful reminder that she was, after all, just a child who wanted what every child deserves: love, security, and a sense of belonging. I knew, with absolute certainty, that we needed professional help. This wasn't something I could navigate alone. After ensuring Clara was comfortably settled with a book, she was a voracious reader, devouring stories, despite having taught herself literacy in secret. I stepped onto the patio, into the relative privacy of the sprawling gardens, to make a private phone call. My best friend, Maya Rodriguez, was a formidable family lawyer specializing in child advocacy. We had been friends since college, sharing dreams over cheap coffee, and she was one of the few people I trusted implicitly, her moral compass as unwavering as her legal mind. I explained the situation as concisely as possible, aware that I was making extraordinary, almost unbelievable claims. I detailed Clara's story, the medications, the hidden documents, the terrifying scope of the financial exploitation. There was a long silence on the other end of the line after I finished, Maya processing the enormity of what I had just revealed. "Jesus, Alara," Maya breathed, her voice a low, horrified whisper. I don't even have words. If what you're saying is true, this is one of the most horrific cases of child abuse and financial exploitation I've ever heard. It's monstrous." "It's true, Maya," I insisted, my voice tight with conviction. "I've seen the evidence. This little girl has been imprisoned in her own body for 5 years, so her family can steal her inheritance. Not just $5 million, but literally hundreds of millions. You need to document everything, Maya advised, her professional instincts kicking in immediately. Photos, copies of documents, recordings if possible. But be incredibly careful. If they catch you, they could spin this against you. The Sterlings have endless resources, powerful connections. They could try to have you committed, discredit you, paint you as delusional. She promised to research the legal implications, prepare for potential emergency proceedings, and reach out to the right contacts in Child Protective Services, CPS. But she warned me, her voice grave, against confronting the family directly without proper preparation. These people sound dangerous, Alara. They've maintained this deception for years. They won't hesitate to destroy you if you threaten their scheme. After my call with Maya, I returned to find Clara looking anxious, a shadow of fear in her bright eyes. "Are you going to send me back to them?" she asked. Her voice small, fragile. I knelt beside her chair, taking her small hands in mine. "Absolutely not, Clara," I said firmly, looking her directly in the eyes. "That's not going to happen. We're going to make sure you're safe, and that nobody ever hurts you again. I promise." Her sigh of relief was almost audible. Over the next few days, we established a meticulous routine, a silent dance of preparation and defiance. During the day, we gathered and secured evidence. I photographed every incriminating document with my phone, copied files onto a secure cloud account Maya had set up, and helped Clara document her experiences in a journal that could potentially be used in court. Each entry was a step towards justice, a reclaiming of her truth. I discovered a disturbing amount of surveillance throughout the house, far more than I had initially observed. Cameras in Clara's room, the hallways, and even some of the common areas. However, they didn't cover everywhere, and we were careful to conduct our most sensitive conversations in camera blind spots, quiet corners Maya helped me identify. We also researched child abuse laws, inheritance regulations, and trustee responsibilities. What the Sterlings were doing wasn't just cruel. It violated numerous state and federal laws. They weren't just being negligent. They were committing serious felonies. Every evening, the family would call to check in, their voices radiating an artificial warmth. I maintained the charade, reporting that Clara was following her usual routines and taking her medication. My voice smooth and deceptive, my heart pounding in my chest. Meanwhile, Clara continued to improve physically and mentally without the sedatives. Her movements became more coordinated, her speech clearer, and her personality blossomed in the freedom she hadn't known. She was funny, curious, remarkably resilient given her circumstances, and surprisingly perceptive. She had a dry wit that caught me off guard, and a thirst for knowledge that was truly inspiring. The question of whether to tell Liam weighed heavily on me. He was my husband, and I wanted to believe he wasn't part of this conspiracy, that he was simply ignorant, perhaps even manipulated. But his blind loyalty to his family, his profound conflict avoidance, made me hesitant to trust him fully with this explosive secret. 5 days into our time alone, I decided to test the waters, to see if there was any crack in his seemingly impenetrable wall of denial. I called Liam while Clara was napping, keeping my tone light, almost casual. "Hey, how's the Caribbean?" I asked, trying to sound as carefree as possible. "Amazing, babe. Dad's meeting's finished early, so we've been hitting the beach, sailing, just relaxing. It's beautiful here. How are things with Clara? Everything quiet?" His voice was cheerful, untroubled. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Actually," I began, my voice carefully neutral, "I've noticed some strange things. Her medical regimen seems extreme, and I found some documents about her trust fund that seem concerning. There's a lot of money involved." There was a noticeable pause, a fractional shift in the air before Liam responded. His voice noticeably cooler, a defensive edge creeping in. "Alara, you know nothing about Clara's condition. The medication is necessary, it's what the best doctors prescribed. And her financial arrangements are absolutely none of your business. That's a family matter." "But Liam, don't you think—" "Look, Alara, Chloe knows what's best for her daughter. Just follow the instructions and stop snooping through family papers. That's totally inappropriate. You're overthinking this." His dismissive response, the immediate shutting down, confirmed my worst fears. Whether Liam was actively complicit or willfully ignorant, He couldn't be trusted to help Clara. His family's narrative was too deeply ingrained. "You're right," I lied, forcing the words out, a bitter taste in my mouth. "I'm sorry, I'm just trying to do my best here." After hanging up, I sat in silence, the phone heavy in my hand. My resolve hardening. I was on my own in this. Me and an 8-year-old girl against a powerful, wealthy family willing to destroy a child's life for money. It was a terrifying thought, but it also crystallized my determination. During our week together, I also focused on helping Clara experience normal childhood activities that had been cruelly denied to her. We baked cookies, filling the vast, unused Sterling kitchen with the warm, comforting scent of sugar and chocolate chips. We played board games, Clara's competitive spirit shining through, and watched movies appropriate for her age, rather than the baby programs her family forced on her. I taught her simple card games like Go Fish and Old Maid, and was amazed at how quickly she learned, her nimble mind soaking up new information. "No one's ever played with me before," she admitted during a game of Go Fish, her eyes downcast. "They just put me in front of the TV, or the nurses would read stories from a special book for special children. I was always alone." The simplicity of her joy at these small, everyday interactions was heartbreaking. I also worked with Clara on basic self-advocacy skills, preparing her for possible interviews with authorities. We practiced how she might answer questions about her treatment and the deception she had been forced to participate in. "Remember, Clara, you've done nothing wrong," I emphasized, looking directly into her eyes. "The adults who were supposed to protect you failed. None of this is your fault. You are so brave." Maya provided guidance on preparing for the family's return. We secured copies of all evidence in multiple locations, including with Maya herself. We developed a code phrase Clara could use if she felt unsafe. My head feels fuzzy again, a clear signal for me to intervene. And I purchased a small, untraceable burner phone, programming emergency numbers into it, hiding it securely in a small compartment I found in Clara's room. The night before the family was scheduled to return, Clara and I finalized our preparations. The evidence was overwhelming. Medical records showing a healthy child until age 3, falsified subsequent records, financial documents revealing the trust manipulation, incriminating emails discussing the deception, videos of a vibrant toddler Clara, and, most importantly, Clara's own clear, articulate testimony. As we sat in the kitchen eating ice cream, another simple pleasure Clara had been denied for years, she looked up at me with serious eyes, a flicker of her earlier fear returning. "What if they don't believe us?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What if they make me go back to pretending? What if they just take me away from you?" I reached across the table and squeezed her hand, offering what comfort I could. "That's not going to happen, Clara," I assured her, my voice firm despite my own rising anxiety. "Too many people know the truth now. You're not alone anymore. You have me, and you have Maya. We won't let them." What I didn't tell her, what gnawed at me, was my fear that the Sterlings' immense wealth and connections might still prevail, that justice wasn't always served, especially when facing opponents with seemingly unlimited resources. But I was determined to fight with everything I had, to be Clara's unwavering champion. "Tomorrow will be hard," I warned gently, my eyes softening. "But remember how brave you've been all these years. Just a little longer, Clara, and then you'll be free. Truly free." As I tucked her into bed, Clara wrapped her arms around my neck in a surprisingly tight hug. "Thank you for believing me," she whispered, her small voice muffled against my shoulder. My heart broke for all the years of affection she had been denied. The simple comfort of a hug. "Always," I promised. "Now get some sleep. Tomorrow is a big day." Little did I know that tomorrow would arrive much sooner than expected. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I was jolted awake by the unmistakable sound of the front door opening, followed by muffled voices in the grand foyer. My eyes snapped open, my heart instantly hammering against my ribs. The family wasn't supposed to return until the afternoon, their flight not due until midday. But here they were, in the middle of the night, catching us completely off guard. It was a Sterling tactic, I realized with a jolt, an unexpected early return to ensure all was as it should be, a surprise inspection to catch any deviation. I scrambled out of bed, my mind racing, adrenaline surging through me. I hurried to Clara's room, the hidden guest room, and found her already awake, sitting bolt upright in bed, her eyes wide with fear, reflecting the pale moonlight filtering through the window. "They're back early," she whispered, trembling, her small body shaking. "They sometimes do this, to check if I'm being good when no one expects it." I helped her quickly return to her official bedroom, the one with the monitoring equipment, the sterile sick room facade. We had to maintain the charade for just a few more minutes. "Remember our plan," I whispered, holding her shoulders, looking into her eyes. "No matter what happens, no matter what they say, I won't let them hurt you again. You are safe. You are strong." I had barely settled her into her large, impersonal bed, making sure her limbs seemed limp, her expression blank, when Chloe appeared in the doorway, still in her travel clothes, looking disheveled but suspicious. "What are you doing in here, Alara?" she demanded, her voice sharp with a hint of accusation. "I heard noises and came to check on Clara," I improvised smoothly, my heart racing but my voice steady. "You're back early." "Daddy's business concluded sooner than expected," Chloe replied, her eyes narrowing as she swept her gaze around the room, taking in every detail. "Has everything been going according to schedule? No issues?" "Of course," I lied, my voice a picture of calm reassurance. "Exactly as you instructed. Clara has been very quiet and compliant." Chloe pushed past me to approach Clara's bed, her movements abrupt. "Let me see her." I watched tensely as she examined her daughter, her gaze piercing, looking for any subtle sign that might betray our deception. Clara played her part perfectly, remaining limp and expressionless, a doll in the bed, as Chloe checked her pulse, lifted her eyelids, and prodded her limbs. "Her medication?" Chloe asked sharply, her eyes still fixed on Clara. "All given as prescribed," I assured her. "The logs are in the kitchen, filled out precisely." Chloe seemed satisfied for the moment, a faint smirk playing on her lips. She left to join the rest of the family downstairs, presumably to get the full report. I squeezed Clara's hand reassuringly under the covers before following, my mind already rehearsing the coming confrontation. In the enormous, dimly lit living room, the entire Sterling clan was assembled despite the early hour. Arthur and Vivian sat regally on the ornate velvet sofa, looking as if they had merely paused their opulent lives to convene a late-night board meeting. Julian paced by the vast fireplace, already looking bored. Liam stood awkwardly near the entrance, avoiding my eyes, his shoulders hunched slightly. The air was thick with tension, palpable even before any words were exchanged. "Alara," Arthur acknowledged me coldly, his voice resonating through the vast space. "I trust everything has been satisfactory in our absence? No surprises?" "Yes," I replied simply, deciding to let them reveal their hand first, to force them to tip their cards. "Everything has been satisfactory." Vivian studied me with calculating eyes, her expression unreadable. "Curious," she began, her voice a low purr. "Amanda checked the medication supply before we left. It seems several doses are unaccounted for, Alara. A rather significant discrepancy." My heart raced, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. But I kept my expression neutral, my face a mask of calm. "I followed the instructions precisely, Vivian," I countered, my voice steady. "Perhaps there was a miscount before you left. The quantities were not precisely clear in the binder." "Perhaps," Vivian conceded, though her tone suggested she believed nothing of the sort. An uncomfortable, suffocating silence fell over the room, stretching out, punctuated only by the distant chime of an antique grandfather clock. It was broken by a sound that caused everyone to freeze, their heads snapping up, eyes wide with shock. Footsteps, light, purposeful footsteps on the grand marble staircase. All heads turned simultaneously as Clara appeared in the doorway, standing perfectly straight, fully dressed in a simple, comfortable dress I had found for her, and very much alert. No blank stare, no slouched posture. Her eyes, those remarkable intelligent eyes, swept over each family member, no longer filled with fear, but with a quiet, determined defiance. "Hello, Mommy," she said clearly, her voice steady, without a hint of lisp or slurring. "Hello, Grandma and Grandpa. I'm feeling much better now. Much, much better." The room erupted into chaos. Chloe lunged toward Clara with a strangled cry, a sound of pure, unadulterated fury and panic. Julian cursed loudly under his breath. Taking a step back as if from an explosion, Vivian pressed a manicured hand to her chest in theatrical shock. Her perfectly coiffed hair finally betraying a slight tremor, Arthur's face turned an alarming shade of deep crimson. his imposing frame vibrating with barely contained rage as he rounded on me, his voice a thunderous bellow that echoed through the grand hall. "What have you done?" he thundered, his eyes blazing, a terrifying mix of fury and disbelief. I moved quickly, instinctively, to stand between him and Clara, shielding her small frame with my own. "I've done nothing," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the fear I felt. "Except stop drugging an innocent child." Chloe, now recovering from her initial shock, grabbed Clara's arm roughly, her fingers digging into Clara's skin. "She needs her medication right now," she shrieked, her voice high-pitched and hysterical. "She's having some kind of episode. She's delusional." "No," Clara cried, pulling away with a strength that surprised everyone, wrenching her arm free. "I won't take it anymore. I know what you're doing. I know about my money." The room fell silent again, a stunned hush even more profound than the first. The air crackling with unspoken accusations. The only sound was Clara's ragged breathing. "Jessica," Chloe said, her voice now dangerously calm, a desperate attempt to regain control. "My daughter is severely disabled and delusional. She needs immediate medical attention. You are clearly confused." "She's neither disabled nor delusional," I countered, standing my ground, my voice unwavering. "She's been pretending for years because you threatened and abused her. I know everything, Chloe, about the trust fund, about the medications, about the surveillance cameras in her room. All of it. Arthur stepped forward, his imposing frame towering over me, his presence menacing. "You have no idea what you're talking about, young woman," he snarled, his eyes slits of fury. "This is a private family matter that you have grossly misinterpreted. You've inserted yourself where you don't belong." "I've misinterpreted nothing," I replied, my voice gaining strength with each word, fueled by the sheer injustice of it all. "I've seen the documents, the emails, the falsified medical records, the videos of Clara as a healthy toddler, running and laughing, before her grandparents died and left her millions." Vivian attempted a different approach, her voice suddenly dripping with a syrupy sweetness that was utterly chilling. "Alara, dear," she cooed, "you've been under tremendous stress caring for a special needs child. It's understandable that you might be confused, perhaps even overwhelmed. Why don't you and Liam go home and rest while we handle Clara's care? You've done your best, but this is clearly beyond you." It was a thinly veiled attempt to dismiss me, to make me disappear. Liam finally spoke up, his voice uncertain, laced with a familiar pleading tone. "Alara, maybe Mom's right. This is a lot. Let's go home and talk. We can sort this out quietly." "There's nothing to discuss, Liam," I said, my gaze meeting his, filled with a quiet disappointment. "Your family has been abusing Clara for years, systematically destroying her life, and I won't walk away and let it continue. Not now, not ever." Chloe suddenly changed tactics, her face contorting with pure, unadulterated rage, her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. "You bitch!" she shrieked, her voice raw. "You've been snooping through my private papers. You have no right." She lunged for Clara again, this time with a small, amber prescription bottle she'd pulled from her purse, her hand surprisingly quick. "You're taking your medicine right now, young lady. You are sick." She tried to force a pill into Clara's mouth. "No," Clara cried out, struggling, her small body twisting in Chloe's grip, a muffled sound of pain escaping her lips as Chloe twisted her arm. "Let me go," something in me snapped. The years of quiet frustration, the months of quiet investigation, the raw injustice of what I was witnessing, it all converged into a single explosive impulse. I shoved Chloe away from Clara with more force than I intended, a primal protective instinct overriding all decorum, sending her stumbling back against an antique side table, scattering delicate porcelain figurines. "Don't you dare touch her," I shouted, my voice resonating with an authority I hadn't known I possessed. Arthur moved toward me with undisguised menace, his eyes black with fury. "That's assault, Alara," he roared. "Julian, call the police. We'll have her arrested for battery and trespassing." "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Arthur," I said, my voice eerily calm, pulling out my phone and holding it up, the screen glowing brightly in the dim light. "Because the police and Child Protective Services have already been contacted. They should be here any minute." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Arthur froze mid-step, his face a mask of calculation, the color draining from his complexion. "You're bluffing," he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice, a hint of desperation. Am I? I held up my phone, showing them the call history. My friend Maya Rodriguez. Perhaps you've heard of her. She's one of the top family lawyers in the state, specializing in child advocacy. She's been documenting everything we've discovered. She said you might try to dismiss it as a family matter. Vivian's perfectly maintained composure finally began to crack. A delicate china plate showing hairline fractures. Arthur, she whispered, her eyes wide with alarm. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Before he could respond, the doorbell rang, its Westminster chime echoing through the tense silence of the room like a death knell. Julian moved to the window and cursed loudly. There's a police car in the driveway. And another car. The color completely drained from Arthur's face. Nobody say a word, he bellowed, his voice tight with panic. I'll handle this. But when he opened the door, it wasn't just the police. Maya stood there, her posture confident and professional, flanked by 2 uniformed officers and a woman I recognized as a CPS caseworker. Maya had delivered exactly as promised. Mr. Sterling, Maya greeted him professionally, her voice calm and authoritative. I'm Maya Rodriguez, attorney at law. I believe you've been expecting us. Arthur attempted to regain control of the situation, his old habits dying hard. There's been a misunderstanding, officer, he said, his voice smooth, practiced. My daughter-in-law has been interfering with my granddaughter's medical care. The child is severely disabled and needs immediate attention. She's clearly distraught. Maya remained unfazed, her gaze unwavering. That's not what the evidence suggests, Mr. Sterling. We have reason to believe Clara Sterling has been subjected to long-term medical abuse and financial exploitation. We've received reports detailing a sophisticated scheme. The officers requested to speak with Clara, and despite Arthur's vehement objections, they insisted, their expressions hardening. As the situation unfolded, I watched Liam closely. His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and then a dawning horror as he began to piece together the truth. The fragments of his family's dark secret finally coalescing into a horrifying picture. Our eyes met across the room, and I silently pleaded with him to choose the right side, to choose Clara, to choose truth over family loyalty. The critical moment came when Chloe, seeing her scheme unraveling before her eyes, made one last desperate theatrical attempt. Clara has severe developmental issues, she insisted to the CPS worker, her voice shrill with desperation. She hallucinates and makes up stories. She needs her medication immediately. She held out the prescription bottle, trembling. The caseworker, a calm, observant woman named Officer Davies, took the bottle and read the label carefully. Her expression became grim. This is a powerful sedative, Miss Sterling, she stated, her voice quiet but firm. Not typically prescribed for children, except in extreme, very rare cases, and certainly not for long-term use at this dosage. She is an extreme case, Chloe snapped, her composure cracking completely. She's violent sometimes. She needs it. Then you won't mind if we have her evaluated by an independent physician? The caseworker replied calmly, her eyes fixed on Chloe. Chloe's face drained of color. You can't take her. She's my daughter. A daughter you've been drugging and abusing for 5 years, I interjected, unable to hold back, my voice laced with righteous anger. You shut up, Chloe screamed, lunging at me, her eyes wild with a terrifying mixture of panic and hatred. One of the officers stepped swiftly between us, restraining her easily. In that moment of chaos, Liam moved to my side, finally breaking his paralysis. He looked at Clara, who was trembling slightly, but standing tall, her gaze fixed on him. Clara, he said gently, kneeling to her level, his voice thick with emotion. Can you tell me the truth? Have they been hurting you? Clara looked at him with weary eyes, then at me. I nodded encouragingly, a silent plea for her to speak her truth. They make me take medicine that makes me sick, she said clearly, her voice small but firm, echoing through the stunned silence of the room. They tell me if I talk or move when people are around, they'll send me away forever. They want my money from my other grandparents. Liam's face crumpled, his carefully constructed world, built on lies and denial, shattered before his eyes. He slowly stood up and turned to his family, who were all watching him with a mixture of rage, calculation, and desperate hope. Is this true? He demanded, his voice hollow, strained. Looking from Arthur to Vivian to Julian. Have you been abusing this child for money? My niece. Arthur attempted damage control, his voice regaining a semblance of its usual authority. Son, you're being manipulated. Your wife has filled your head with lies. She's unstable. No more lies, Liam replied, his voice firm, his eyes blazing with a dawning fury. I want the truth, now. Vivian tried next, her voice trembling slightly. Liam, darling, you know Clara's condition. We've all sacrificed so much to care for her. This is madness. Then you won't mind proving her condition with independent doctors, will you, Mom? Liam countered, his voice sharp with newfound resolve. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, but Maya stepped forward with a folder in her hand, her expression resolute. Officers, I have copies of all the evidence Alara has gathered here tonight. Financial records, incriminating emails, falsified medical documentation, video evidence, enough to launch a criminal investigation into child abuse, fraud, and financial exploitation. She turned her gaze to Chloe, her voice unwavering. Including your emails discussing how to have Clara declared incompetent when she turns 18 to maintain control of her trust. Chloe's face drained of color, her eyes darting frantically. Those were private. You can't have those. They are evidence of conspiracy and child abuse, Miss Sterling, Maya corrected coldly. And they are now in the hands of the authorities. Arthur, ever the businessman, quickly assessed the situation. The game was up. He changed tactics, his voice lowering to a smooth, confidential whisper as he addressed the officers. Perhaps we can discuss this matter privately. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone. This could be resolved discreetly. The implication was clear. He was offering a bribe, a way to make this inconvenient truth disappear. The lead officer's expression hardened, his voice chillingly precise. Mr. Sterling, are you attempting to interfere with a police investigation? Arthur backpedaled immediately, a flicker of panic in his eyes. Of course not, officer. I'm simply suggesting that this family matter could be resolved without unnecessary publicity, for the sake of the child. Child abuse is not a family matter, Mr. Sterling, the officer replied coldly. It's a criminal offense, and it's handled by the law. What happened next shocked everyone, even me. Chloe, seeing no way out, her world collapsing around her, broke down completely. It was a raw, unfiltered display of terror and self-preservation. It was Daddy's idea, she cried, pointing a trembling finger at Arthur, her voice cracking, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. He said Clara's inheritance could solve all our problems. The company was failing. We needed the capital. He said no one would question it if Clara had special needs, because everyone felt sorry for her. Chloe, shut up, Arthur bellowed, his voice laced with venom. But it was too late. The dam had broken. He arranged everything, Chloe continued, her confession tumbling out in a torrent of words. The doctors, the medications. I just did what he told me. He said it was only temporary, just until we stabilized the business. But then it went on, and I didn't know how to stop it. He threatened me. The officers exchanged grave glances. Chloe had just confessed to child abuse and fraud in front of multiple witnesses, implicating her father in the process. Vivian, ever conscious of appearances, made one last futile attempt at damage control. This is all a terrible misunderstanding, she wailed, clutching her husband's arm. We only wanted what was best for Clara. By drugging her into submission and stealing her inheritance? I couldn't help interjecting, my voice shaking with disgust. That's not best, Vivian, that's monstrous. The next few hours passed in a blur of official statements, stunned silence, and controlled chaos. Clara was taken to the hospital for a full medical evaluation, accompanied by the CPS worker and, at my insistence, myself. Liam came with us, shell-shocked and visibly reeling from his family's betrayal, but determined to make things right. Arthur and Chloe were taken to the police station for questioning, their faces grim, their power stripped away. Vivian and Julian were instructed not to leave town as the investigation proceeded. The Sterling family's carefully constructed facade, their world of pristine appearances and hidden cruelties, had crumbled in a single, shattering night. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what we already knew, a truth that ripped through the years of lies like a hurricane. Clara was physically and neurologically normal for her age, a vibrant, intelligent 8-year-old. While some of her developmental milestones were understandably delayed in certain areas due to the years of isolation and forced medication, There were no signs of any congenital disorder or disability. She was, as she had always been, a perfectly healthy child. Her potential cruelly suppressed. The report was a powerful vindication. As Clara underwent various tests and evaluations, now with gentle, caring medical professionals, Liam and I sat in the waiting room, the weight of the night's revelations hanging heavy between us. The silence was thick, filled with unspoken regrets and seismic shifts in our relationship. I had no idea, Liam said finally, his voice hollow, barely a whisper. He looked utterly defeated, his face pale, his eyes red-rimmed. I swear, Alara, I didn't know what they were doing. I truly believed she was sick. You didn't want to know, Liam, I corrected gently, my voice soft but firm, looking at him directly. There were signs, small things, but you chose not to see them. You chose to believe the comfortable lie your family spun. He nodded, accepting the truth of my words, a tear finally tracking a path down his cheek. What happens now? He asked, his voice raw with despair. Now, I replied, taking his hand. A tentative gesture of support. Now we make sure Clara is safe and gets justice. Everything else is secondary. It was a long road ahead for us, for our marriage, but at least we were finally, unequivocally, on the same side. Later that night, as Clara finally slept in her hospital bed, monitored by nurses who knew the truth and treated her with genuine compassion, Maya updated us on the legal situation. Chloe's confession complicates things for Arthur, she explained, her voice businesslike but tinged with weary satisfaction. He's already trying to claim she acted alone, but the evidence suggests otherwise. They're both facing serious charges: child abuse, fraud, financial exploitation of a minor. Arthur is also looking at bribery charges for his attempt to buy off the officers, which is a felony on top of everything else. Vivian and Julian might be implicated as well, depending on how much they knew and whether they actively participated in the deception. The DA's office is taking this very seriously. And Clara? I asked, the only question that truly mattered, cutting through the legal jargon. The court will appoint a guardian ad litem to represent her interests, Maya explained. Given the circumstances, they'll want to place her with family, but obviously not with Chloe or the elder Sterlings. Liam and I exchanged glances. The thought had been forming in the back of my mind since Clara spoke those first words. We could take her, he said quietly, his voice a little stronger, meeting my gaze. If she wants that. If you want that, Alara. It wasn't a simple solution. Liam was still processing his family's monumental betrayal, and our marriage had been dealt a serious blow by his initial reaction. But it was a start. A commitment to putting Clara's needs first. A tangible step towards building a new kind of family. One step at a time, Maya advised, sensing the unspoken complexities. The important thing is that she's safe now. You did that, Alara. You saved her. As I looked through the doorway at the sleeping child, her face serene in the soft light, the brave little girl who had shown such incredible courage, I felt a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and a fierce, unwavering resolve. The confrontation had been won, the first battle in a very long war, but the real battle for Clara's future, for her healing, was just beginning. 3 months after that fateful, chaotic night, I sat in a sunlit courtroom, the muted hum of legal proceedings, a stark contrast to the dramatic confrontation that had brought us here. I watched as the judge finalized our temporary guardianship of Clara. The last quarter year had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, therapy appointments, and profound adjustments to our new family structure. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, but also incredibly rewarding. The Sterling family had imploded spectacularly, their carefully constructed world of power and prestige crumbling into public disgrace. Arthur and Chloe had both been charged with multiple felonies, including child abuse, fraud, and financial exploitation. Arthur's arrogant attempt to buy his way out of trouble had spectacularly backfired when he tried to bribe a detective, adding witness tampering to his growing list of charges. Chloe, continuing her strategy of self-preservation, had agreed to testify against her father in exchange for a plea deal. She still faced significant jail time, but less than she might have otherwise. In her more lucid moments during therapy sessions, she expressed a flicker of remorse for her treatment of Clara, though it was difficult to determine whether her regret was genuine or merely a calculated performance for the court. Vivian had avoided direct criminal charges due to insufficient evidence of her active, direct involvement in the physical abuse or financial manipulation, though her complicity was clear. However, she had been named in civil suits regarding the mismanagement of Clara's trust, and her reputation in high society, the thing she valued above all else, was in absolute tatters. The prestigious charitable organizations she had once chaired quietly asked her to resign, distancing themselves from the scandal. Julian had managed to distance himself legally from the worst of the scheme, claiming ignorance of the full extent, but his career had suffered nonetheless, with his high-powered investment firm placing him on indefinite leave pending the outcome of Bar Association inquiries. The sterling name, once synonymous with power and integrity, was now whispered with shame and disgust. As for Liam and me, we had embarked on intensive marriage counseling. His failure to believe me initially, his blind loyalty to his family, had created a deep rift, a wound that wouldn't heal overnight. But his unwavering support of Clara since the truth emerged, his genuine remorse, had given us a solid foundation to rebuild upon. He had bravely cut financial ties with his family, refusing to accept any more of Arthur's tainted money, and was starting his own consulting business, determined to make his own way without the sterling fortune or connections. It was a difficult path, but one he walked with integrity. The most remarkable transformation, however, had been Clara's. Free from medication and fear, she had blossomed like a flower finally given sunlight and water after years in the dark. Her physical strength had returned quickly, and though she had educational gaps to fill, years of schooling missed, her incredible intelligence, resilience, and boundless curiosity made her a quick study. She devoured books, learned new concepts with astonishing speed, and eagerly soaked up every new experience. The court had appointed a respected financial manager as the new trustee for Clara's inheritance, with strict oversight provisions to prevent any future manipulation. The trust would now provide for her education, therapy, and care while protecting the principal until she came of age. The existence of the larger inheritance, the $500 million waiting at 25, had been confirmed and secured. Her long-term future, financially at least, was safe. Therapy was helping Clara process her years of trauma. Though the road to full emotional recovery would be long, some nights she still woke with nightmares, calling out in fear that her mother or grandfather was coming to punish her for speaking, for being herself. On those nights, I would sit with her, holding her close, reassuring her that she was safe, that no one would hurt her again, that those dark days were over. We had enrolled her in school, a small private academy with experience handling children with unusual backgrounds, a nurturing environment where she could thrive. After initial adjustment difficulties, the shyness, the unfamiliarity with social norms, she had begun to make friends, to participate in normal childhood activities, to laugh freely without fear. Her first sleepover had been a significant milestone, a triumph celebrated with ice cream and a movie marathon, Clara giggling late into the night with her new friends. As the judge signed the final guardianship papers, the scratch of his pen echoing in the quiet courtroom, Clara squeezed my hand, her face shining with a quiet hope I hadn't thought possible a few months ago. "It's official now," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. "It's official," I confirmed, my own voice thick with emotion. "You're staying with us, Clara. You're home." Outside the courtroom, Maya met us with a warm smile. "Congratulations, Alara, Liam. The hard part is over." "Is it ever really over?" I asked quietly, thinking of the years of healing still ahead, the long journey of processing trauma, the challenges of rebuilding a life so profoundly shattered. "The worst is," she assured me, placing a hand on my arm, "you gave her a future, Alara. You gave her a voice. Not many people would have had the courage to do what you did, to stand up against such power." Inspired by our experience, Maya and I had established a small foundation to help identify and support other children in similar situations, victims of medical child abuse and financial exploitation. It was in its infancy, but we had already connected with families across the country whose stories echoed Clara's in disturbing ways. That evening, we celebrated with a small, intimate party at our new home, a modest, sunlit house we had purchased in a family-friendly neighborhood, far from the grand, haunted halls of the Sterling mansion with its painful memories. Liam grilled burgers on the patio while Clara played in the backyard with two friends from school. Their joyful shouts filling the air, their laughter, light and free, was a healing balm after so much silence and pain. As I watched her run and jump, her face alight with joy, I thought about how close she had come to losing her childhood entirely, how easily her story could have had a different tragic ending, if she hadn't found the courage to trust me that night in the kitchen, if I hadn't chosen to listen to the quietest voice in the room. The next morning was another milestone, Clara's first day at my art school. I had returned to teaching, and though we had initially considered different schools to give her independence, Clara had insisted she wanted to be where I was, to be my student. "I want to paint with you, Alara," she'd said. "Ready for your first day, artist?" I asked, as I helped her adjust her backpack, a brand new one filled with colorful pencils and a sketchbook. She nodded, nervous but excited, her small hand clutching mine. "Do you think the other kids will like me?" "They'll love you," I assured her, squeezing her hand. "Just be yourself, Clara, your true self." As we walked through the school doors together, Clara's hand in mine, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought us here. From reluctant caregiver to fierce advocate, from isolated victim to thriving child, we had both been transformed by the truth and the courage to stand by it. That night, after Clara had gone to bed, exhausted but happy after her successful first day of school, Liam and I sat on the porch swing, talking quietly about the future, the soft summer breeze rustling through the leaves. "She asked me today," Liam said, his voice thick with emotion, staring out into the twilight, "if she could call us Mom and Dad." My breath hitched. I rested my head on his shoulder, a profound sense of peace settling over me, a warmth that had been absent for months. "What did you tell her?" I whispered. "I told her she could call us whatever makes her comfortable," Liam said, turning to me, his eyes shining. "That family isn't always about blood. It's about love, and choosing to be there, and protecting each other." "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" I asked. "Not just about us, but about all three of us." "Better than okay," he promised, pulling me closer. "We're going to be the family she deserves. We're going to paint a whole new future for her, Alara, a much, much brighter one." The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more court dates, more therapy sessions, and inevitable challenges as Clara continued to process her trauma and reclaim her lost years. But watching her grow stronger each day, witnessing her reclaim the childhood that had been stolen from her, seeing her laugh, learn, and love again, made every difficulty worthwhile. The most profound lesson I had learned through all of this was about the courage it takes to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Sometimes, standing up for what's right means standing alone against powerful forces, risking everything you have for someone who has nothing. But in that risk comes the greatest reward, the knowledge that you've changed a life forever, that you've helped rewrite a story that was heading toward tragedy into one of triumph and hope. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have had the courage to stand up against a powerful family to protect a child you barely knew? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if Clara's story touched your heart. Your support helps us reach others who might be facing similar struggles. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most important voice is the quietest one in the room, waiting to be heard.